Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Spoken Worth. Thank you for watching the Spoken Worth podcast. If you're watching this week's episode, click like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and catch each episode that we release. And we're going through an Apologetics summer series. And this next episode is on the concept of truth and identifying what it is not, and observing the absurdity of life without absolute or objective truth. So we hope you enjoy this episode. And remember, click like and subscribe. You matter, you are loved, and you are appreciated. Thank you. Be blessed. Okay, let's jump right into today's episode. This is episode, I believe 15 or 16, but it's the second episode of our Apologetics series that we're going through this summer. And we started off with just identifying what apologetics is, why it's necessary for today and our culture. And so today I really just want to look at this idea of truth. Truth. We live in a society where truth, and that word, is viewed extremely differently depending on your worldview or depending on what you may believe. And so I really want to just take some time to identify some very basic concepts regarding truth so that it sets us up for the rest of our series. And I really think it's necessary to come to a mutual understanding with people that we present the gospel to in regards to what truth is and if absolute truth is necessary at all, or if it exists. And so a lot of people disagree on that. And so I really just want to look at truth, what it is, what also it is not. And also I want to look at the absurdity of life without absolute or objective truth. And in doing so, we're going to look at some of the competing perceptions and views of truth today in our culture. And so let's begin by just defining what truth is. And I want you to think of a scenario, an illustration. I invite you for a moment to think of an illustration with me of a scenario in which an accident or an incident occurs on the road. Imagine a 3 to 4 car crash or a 4 to 5 car crash. It's a big pileup, right? Everyone from each car starts arguing over whose fault it is when the car crash happened. You know, everyone's safe, but some people are complaining of different injuries and whatnot. But everybody gets out and they start complaining and arguing over what happened. I want you to imagine one person claims that they were rear-ended by the car behind them, but the other person in that car makes the claim that she was rear-ended by the car behind them as well, which caused them to crash into the back of the car in front of them. Then both of them begin to blame the person driving the car in the back of the crash. The person in the back goes on to blame the car in the front for their brake lights not working. And ultimately, there's just a heated argument between every single person involved. And no one is establishing the truth of the matter. Even if there are multiple opinions in this scenario, and even if these opinions are expressed in this heated discussion on what really happened from different people, we can still establish the truth within the situation. The truth is that an accident occurred. Truth then can be defined as giving and disseminating information as it actually is. Truth can be defined as that which corresponds to its object, that which corresponds to reality, that which describes as an actual state of affairs. See, falsehood is when falsehood is what does not correspond. It tells it like it is not. It misrepresents the way things are, and the intent behind the statement is irrelevant. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. if it lacks proper correspondence to reality, it is not true. It is false. James Sire excellently said this on truth. He defined truth in this way. Truth is propositional. A statement is true if what it says is so, or if what it says is not so, is not so. So truth is a fact that by its very nature is immutable, meaning it cannot change. It cannot change. Truth is immutable by nature. That is what is meant by whatever is true must be in agreement with and conform to reality and reality alone. Reality is what is real. Reality is what exists independent of people's opinions or beliefs. And so therefore, what do we learn about truth? We learn that truth is discovered, not invented. We learn that truth is transcultural, and we learn that truth is unchanging. No matter what you believe about it or how you feel about it, truth is what it is. It's immutable, cannot change. And so what is truth? Truth is the giving and the disseminating of information as it actually is. It is that which corresponds to reality. It is a propositional, it is propositional, and it's a statement that is only true if what it says is so, or if what it says is not so, is not so. It must correspond to reality. Falsehood tells what is not true, tells it as it isn't. It misrepresents things. And so if we can understand and know what truth is, that which corresponds to reality, then we can therefore know and understand what truth is not. We can then understand and know what truth is not. And I think that's important too, because we have a lot of misconceptions in our culture today about truth, and a lot of people think truth is dependent on a lot of these things that I'm going to cover. I'm going to share with you 12 things that truth is not dependent on. And I really think this is in a lot of ways countercultural. But this is truth is not dependent on anyone's perspective or individual worldview. In other words, truth is truth regardless of one's perspective. Despite our biases and limitations to seeing truth, objectivity is possible. Objectivity is possible. Have you ever heard the phrase, "you can't handle the truth"? Why is that phrase a phrase? It's because absolute truth is objective, meaning that someone who wants truth to be subjective doesn't get their way or get what they want. And in the case with the car crash that we mentioned earlier, the person driving the car in the back may be upset to find out that the truth of the law is that rear-ending someone is always their fault, even if it wasn't fair that the car in front of them had no brake lights. They cannot avoid the truth that rear-ending someone results in their blame. A lot of times, truth hurts because it's objective. It cannot be subjective. Truth is not dependent on anyone knowing it. In other words, truth is not dependent on whether or not it is known by the masses. Even if no one in a certain area, didn't know the truth, was truth, the truth would still exist. It doesn't erase truth. Truth doesn't change because of that. Truth is truth regardless if anyone knows it. Thirdly, truth is not dependent on the acknowledgement of others. Something can be true even if no one admits it. Ask investigators. They definitely know this. Something can be true even if the person is not admitting it. Number four, truth is not dependent on people agreeing on it. It doesn't need to be agreed upon. And this is a big one within society today. A lot of people think, well, if everybody agrees on something, then it must be true. That is not the case at all. That's not the case at all. Something can be true even if no one agrees with what it is, or even if it's not agreed upon. And think about it. Big figures like Andrew Tate made it very clear that his conversion from Christianity to Islam was because of Christians not agreeing on the Bible and there being too many divisions within Christianity. And so therefore it can't be true because we can't even agree on it enough. So in other words, there's a core principle behind that conversion and probably behind a lot of people's conversions or deconversions that says, well, there's not enough people who agree upon it, or there's not enough people who are on the same page with it. There's too much division, so therefore it can't be true. And that's not true. Truth is truth regardless if anyone agrees upon what it is. And secondly, number 5, truth is not dependent on people carrying it out. Something can be true even if no one follows it. Something can be true even if no one follows it. If no one followed Jesus, Jesus would still be true. And that's especially what I would say to Andrew Tate or to anybody who would leave Christianity for another worldview or another religion for the reason of Christianity not seeing enough Christians practicing Christianity the way it should be practiced, or the diminishing of the practice of Christianity, or people not agreeing upon it enough. Truth is not dependent on people agreeing on it or people carrying it out. Number 6, truth is not dependent on understanding or comprehension. Something can be true even if no one but God grasps it fully. Number 7, truth is not what works. Truth is not what works. If a person says, this is true because it is working for me, what I would say for them is, well, what if someone said, I sacrificed my firstborn and now it's raining? We have to be careful with that. Truth is not what works or what is working. Number 8, truth is not that which coheres. Truth is not that which coheres. Remember, if the truth doesn't match up with the majority of people's perspective of truth, it doesn't make it false or not true. It doesn't depend on being in agreement of others' beliefs or perspectives. Number 9, truth is not that which was intended. In other words, something is if someone says to me or if someone says to you, something is true because I intended it to be true, that's false. Why? Because someone can intend to do something, but unless it happens, it is not truth. Why? Because it didn't correspond to reality. I can intend to be kind to my wife, but if I'm impatient and my behavior is irritable and I'm not kind to her, and what would that make me? Would that make me kind to my wife? No, the truth would not correspond to that. So therefore, intention does not determine truth. Truth is not dictated or determined by that which was intended. Number 10, truth is not dependent on comprehensiveness. Now, this is a tricky one. Comprehensiveness is a test of truth. I want to make that very clear. Comprehensiveness is a test of truth, but not a definition of truth. It would require an objective consistency of occurrence to really, for that to be so. So remember, it's not determined or dependent by comprehensiveness, but it is a test of truth. Comprehensiveness is. You wouldn't want something. You wouldn't want to necessarily throw all your trust into something if there was no comprehensive evidence for that. For example, I have a lot of trust in the Bible being reliable because there's a comprehensive amount of evidence to show that it is reliable. So it's a test of truth, although I can't say because of all these, the comprehensive amount of manuscripts that we have of Old Testament manuscripts and New Testament manuscripts, the Bible is therefore reliable. That's one test of truth, but really there's a lot of evidences for the reliability of the Bible that I would want to rely on other than just comprehensiveness. So truth is not dependent on comprehensiveness. So be careful. If something seems very comprehensive and wow, be careful. That does not necessarily mean it's true. Truth is not what is existentially relevant. Soren famously said, if you can't live it out, it is false. In other words, it's relativism. It's the idea that if you can't experience it, then it's not true. Well, that's not true at all. What I would say to that is just because I don't experience racism or certain prejudice, does that mean racism and those prejudices don't exist? Absolutely not. So just because you can't experience something doesn't make it false. So Soren was not right in that. Number 12, lastly, truth is not what feels good. And this is a big one for society as well. Truth is not what feels good. Abusing substances may feel good, but it certainly isn't good for somebody. So really think about your perception of truth, how you think of truth, and whether or not truth is dependent on some of these things for you. Because I know a lot of times in society, we get confused on what truth is, and we think truth is dependent on a lot of these things, but truth is not. And thankfully, truth is not dependent on any of these things, but rather truth is immutable. It cannot change. It stands independent of alone, and it can stand the test. It can stand the test. The third point that I want to talk about now that we've gone through, what truth is and what truth is not, I want to go through the absurdity of life. The absurdity of life without absolute truth. In other words, why relativism, subjectivism, skepticism, pluralism do not compete with objective truth and absolute truth that we see presented through the biblical worldview. So I just really want to cover the three primary, I would say, competing views of truth today. In other words, the three competing ideas of truth that people have. And those three would be relativism, skepticism, and pluralism. Relativism, skepticism, and pluralism. And there's a lot more, but I really believe these three are some of the biggest ones that we see. I teach in a school of 7th through 12th grade students, in a school of over 290 students, and I can say I see a lot of relativism, I see a lot of skepticism, and I see a lot of pluralism. I see these three things everywhere, and I really think it's worth addressing why these views of truth, why these perceptions of truth, these beliefs of truth don't compete with objective or absolute truth. And so let's begin with relativism. Relativism. Really, there's two types of relativism, so I'm kind of splitting this one into two. But relativism can be viewed through the lenses of ethical relativism or cultural relativism. Ethical relativism is individual relativism that believes what is morally right is relative to the beliefs or emotions of the individual. So in other words, morals and ethics, what is right and wrong, is determined by the individual's belief, opinion, or feeling or emotion. And so think about it. If ethics and morality were determined by each individual or their emotions or beliefs or opinions, we would live in a world of opinionated morality in which no one has an objectively better morality than another person. Think about it. What this means is someone who is an ethical relativist may not agree with someone else's morality. They may not practice someone else's morality, but based on their own standard of ethics and morality and understanding of truth, they cannot judge any other person's morality or deem that it is bad. In other words, their opinion of morality is then not superior or inferior to anyone else's opinion of morality, even people like Hitler. Think about it. If morals and ethics are based on a person's opinions, beliefs, or emotions, then what we find is that we have an ever-changing, non-consistent, non-justifiable, non-trustworthy baseline of morality. If I think, well, morality and ethics, what is right and wrong, is just an opinion on what I think and feel, then what makes what I think and feel is right and wrong any better, any greater than, say, what a serial killer thinks is what is right and wrong, or a dictator of a country thinks is right and wrong. We see a lot of people in the world do a lot of what we call and consider wrong things, And yet, if we're an ethical relativist, how can we call those things wrong things? If we believe that what is right and wrong is just determined based on my opinions and beliefs. What if that person's beliefs considers that thing a right thing? Then who am I to call that a wrong thing? See, you see why ethical relativism really starts to have some problems with it if we carry it out to its end. And then you have cultural relativism. And this is the belief that truth or what is morally right varies and can change depending on the society someone lives in. And this is equally as dangerous for different reasons. If truth was determined by what the culture accepts and believes, that would make truth not immutable, but constantly changing. Think about from just a couple of years ago to now, what has our culture gone through as far as what do we believe is right and wrong? Over the last couple hundreds of years, what is the difference between what we have believed in, what is right and wrong? If this is true, if cultural relativism is true, that would mean that slavery, incest, child brides, and other obviously ethically, morally wrong practices would not have been wrong if and only if the society and culture determines as a majority that it is okay. What if America once again made it legal to own people? What if our culture got to a place where culturally we believe that owning people is okay? Would it make it truthful that owning people is okay because the culture believes that it's okay? Absolutely not. So we can't use this reasoning of, well, it's 2023 and this is what we believe today. It's what back then, that's just what they believed. In regards to slavery, I've heard people tell me, oh, well, that's just what they believed back then. And so, it wasn't wrong. No, absolutely it was wrong. It was still wrong then, and it's still wrong now. Why? Because the truth is owning people is wrong. So what can we conclude? That truth is never changing. It's immutable. Owning people will always be wrong. So, in other words, cultural relativism doesn't work within reality. So it doesn't correspond to reality. Therefore, we can conclude that morals, truth, ethics cannot come from a place of cultural relativism. And then secondly, I really want to cover this view of truth that's skepticism. This view of truth that is skepticism. We are in an ever-growing culture of skepticism. And skepticism is the denial of genuine common human knowledge. Someone who is given to skepticism argues that you cannot know for sure and doubts and questions what is known to an unreasonable end. And that's the key, to an unreasonable end. I'm not saying it's not good to question, but I'm saying there's a difference between being thorough and investigative and questioning, asking tough questions, and being a skeptic. Someone who's a skeptic will doubt and question solid, very, very trustworthy evidence to an unreasonable, that's the key word, unreasonable end. Meaning if you had reasonable evidence right in front of them, they would not consider to look at it objectively because of skepticism. And that's the problem. And then there's also a type of skepticism called philosophical skepticism. And this is an extreme skepticism. This is someone who can be distinguished from ordinary skepticism because they believe that we are unable to know anything at all as truth. In other words, they believe that there is no truth in their mind about anything. Someone who's a philosophical skeptic might say something like, there is no objective truth, or truth cannot be known, or no one can really know what is true. But think about it. All these statements, and maybe you've heard these statements before. Maybe you've heard, no one can know what is true. But what would I say to one of those statements? What I would say to one of those statements is, well, is that true? Is it true that no one knows the truth? And if that's true, then how is that true if you don't have the truth? You see why these are self-defeating, self-collapsing statements. Philosophical skepticism is an unreasonable view of truth that does not allow one to reach truth. And it proposes that truth is unreachable, is undiscoverable. It's unknowable, that it can't be grasped at all. And that's just simply not true. We can know things. We can know truth. We don't have to be skeptics about everything. It's good to question things, though. And then the third view of truth that I really want to kind of look at is pluralism. This is another really big one. Pluralism is growing so much in our culture, and it's this refusal to see one religion as truer than others. Someone who is given to pluralism is someone who refuses to see any religion or belief system or worldview or way of life as superior to any others in any way. This person believes that all religions are the same, or that they lead to the same place, or are all equal in teaching and equal in truth. And so my main question that I propose for this worldview and for anybody that has this worldview is, do all addresses lead to the same house? Ask yourself that. If I gave you a random address, would it take you to your house? Or what if I gave you if I gave you 100 different addresses, would they all lead to your house? They wouldn't. You can't put in 100 different addresses on your GPS and expect to get to the same location. And so why do we believe that all things can then equally be true or equally lead to the same destination? Christianity, think about it. Christianity, and we don't even have time to go through all the different worldviews and religions, but Christianity believes that truth is singular. And Jesus did too. Jesus says in John 14, verse 6, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And so think about it. Jesus makes this claim himself in the gospel. And throughout the Gospels, we see Jesus constantly pointing to himself as the exclusive and only way to the Father. And so Jesus did not believe in this idea that truth was pluralistic or that anybody can lead anyone to the Father. In fact, he even says when blind men lead others, they both fall into a ditch. And so what we learn is that truth is not pluralistic. The process of discovering truth begins with the self-evident laws of logic. And pluralism defies the self-evident laws of logic. And sometimes these are presented as what's called first principles. First principles. And pluralism defies these first principles. And we see, one, the law of non-contradiction. This is a self-evident first principle of thought that says contradictory claims cannot be both true at the same time in the same sense. So one, either the theists are right, God exists, or the atheists are right, God doesn't exist. Both cannot be correct. And then we see the law of the excluded middle. And this is a first principle that tells us that something is either or it is either not. In other words, God either exists or he either doesn't. Either Jesus rose from the dead or he did not. Okay, so if you're watching the podcast on video and you're wondering what's up with the switch up of outfit, switch up of location, let me explain. So my camera died while filming the original first 27 minutes of the video of the episode. And so what happened was I decided that I would film the last part of the video, the conclusion of our 3 points that we've covered in this episode at a different time. And that's what I've done. I'm just doing this now on my phone in my kitchen. But I just wanted to kind of jump back to where we were. We're talking about why pluralism isn't really realistic for the world or the reality that we live in today. We learned that truth cannot be pluralistic. We learned about the law of non-contradiction. And we learned about these first principles in which, based on the laws of logic, don't allow two polar opposite things to be true at the same time. God either exists or he does not exist. Jesus either died or he rose from death. There is no third alternative. And so what we learn is that when we take the worldview of pluralism, we actually find a lot of problems in life. We find ourselves having contradictions in our own worldviews. It's not very consistent, and it's really self-defeating, self-collapsing. And so really, when we look at relativism, when we look at skepticism, when we look at pluralism, when we look at ethical and cultural relativism specifically, all these different worldviews that pertain to someone's view of truth, we see that they fall short of an absolute objective truth, a truth that is greater than ourselves. And really, when you think about it, if there is no absolute truth, if there's no objective truth, then there's no justifying right and wrong. I can't call something wrong unless there is something that is the standard of right. And so I'm very confident the world we live in, we can call things bad. We can call things evil. We can call things wrong. And the reason we can do that, it is greater than our own emotions, beliefs, and our ever-changing cultural beliefs, individual beliefs. It's greater than anything that we can conclude ourselves, and that is, it's the objective standard called God. The greatest standard of good possible is God. And so what we see is that absolute truth, objective truth, does exist. And so what we've covered in this episode is just threefold. What truth is, what truth is not. We went through 12 things in which truth is not dependent on. And then we covered really the absurdity of reality if absolute truth or objective truth wasn't the case, if relativism was true, if skepticism was true, or if pluralism was true. There's just too many flaws with these views of truth. And so I want to encourage us, if you're watching this video, if you're a listener, if you're a viewer, be someone who stands firm on truth. Be someone who does not compromise truth. Truth when compromised becomes no truth at all. Truth when compromised becomes falsehood. Remember, truth is that which corresponds to reality. It tells it as it really is. So, in a world in which is very confused about truth, let us be people, let us be Christians, followers of Jesus, in which present truth very clearly for what it is. And the truth is that Jesus Christ lived a perfect life, died for our sins because he loves us, and raised from death 3 days later by the Spirit of God, and offers us a relationship with him. And so if you're watching this video, if you're listening to this episode, thank you. I would love to hear from you. Reach out to me, comment on the videos, reach out to me via email. You can become a Patreon for only $5 a month. That means you get early and exclusive access to all of my music, to all of my content, to everything that I'm doing, any music videos, any podcast episodes, anything at all, any news. And we have community opportunities in which we get together via Zoom. We have FaceTime, we have Q&As, and we spend time together on occasions as well. And so you can become a Patreon for $5 a month. And I encourage you to also listen to my music. I make music as well. I make spoken word poetry, and I go by Spoken Worth. And so you can stream me on any listening platform. You can stream my music on Apple Music, Spotify Music, anywhere you stream your music, you can find my music, Spoken Worth. And hopefully it's music that's worth your time. And so I make music, I do a podcast, and so thank you for listening to the podcast. Hopefully some of my other content can be enjoyable for you as well and can be beneficial for your faith walk and your journey with Jesus. Thank you so much. Remember, truth matters, because a world and a reality without truth would be chaos. And so truth brings stability, truth brings structure, and truth presents the opportunity for us to have a relationship with God, because truth is Jesus. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe, please share. Remember, speak life, speak worth. You're loved, you matter. Blessings.